Chapter 87 Ramen. The midday sun was bright in their eyes as Gojo and Geto crossed the main courtyard. It was bustling with students making their way to and from the cafeteria or eating their takeout on benches. Even with all the activity, Gojo could still make out the familiar footsteps approaching behind them. He touched Geto's elbow and they both stopped and turned around. Gojo! Geto! Shoko's long white doctor's coat fluttered as she made her way to them. She greeted the two of them with a warm smile, a little out of breath. I heard you were back in class. Do you have time to go out for lunch? I have to be back in an hour. Hey, Shoko. We're already dismissed for the day. Gojo turned to Geto. Suguru? Geto didn't want to admit it, but he was surprised that Gojo checked with him first, before answering for him. Yeah, sure. Lunch sounds good, he answered. Let's get ramen, Shoko said as they fell into step with each other. Gojo and Geto were already expecting her to suggest it. They had a favorite place that was the perfect distance from campus, far enough away that most students avoided going there in the middle of the school day. They reached the standalone ramen shop, and Shoko stepped up to the ticket machine to place her order. She always scrolled through the whole menu on the touchscreen, even though she always ordered the same thing. Shio ramen with egg, extra green onions, and no meat. Gojo ordered tonkotsu ramen with extra pork. He turned to Geto. Geto touched the screen to add his miso ramen with chili oil. You should get extra meat, Geto. Or get a smaller uniform, Shoko teased. But behind the teasing was a note of concern. She saw how Geto's uniform was swallowing him up. Geto didn't say anything, but he pressed the plus sign next to the extra meat option and stepped away from the machine. Gojo always insisted on paying when they went out, and he scanned his card. After they gave their order tickets to the cooks, they saw their usual table was empty and made their way to it. Shoko and Geto sat on one side of the table, and Gojo had the other side, their backpacks occupying the rest of the bench. It was like old times, but not quite. Geto listened to Shoko and Gojo banter about the short school week they had since returning. Yaga had been dismissing them early, since the afternoons were usually used for specialized training or prep for upcoming missions. When their large bowls of soup arrived, they all removed their respective outerwear to avoid the broth stains that would inevitably splash out of the bowls. Geto rolled up his shirt sleeves and immediately regretted it. Shoko glanced over at him, scrutinizing the bruises on his wrists. She tried to meet his eyes, but he avoided her and snapped his chopsticks apart so he could eat. Gojo was already slurping up his noodles and didn't catch their exchange. Shoko was curious about their situation, where they were with their training, when they would be going on missions again, if Geto was doing okay mentally and physically. But she kept their conversation superficial and upbeat. After lunch, they walked back to the courtyard, their bellies warm and full, and parted ways. Have a good weekend, Shoko waved. Call me if you need anything, she added, looking at Geto. See you later, Gojo called out as he turned around. Geto gave her a small wave. Gojo shifted his backpack around his shoulders and reached out to brush Geto's bangs out of his face as they walked. Shoko caught the gesture before she turned around and walked back to the clinic. Gojo, always wearing his heart on his sleeve, she thought. Geto's social battery was drained by the time they got back to their room. They napped for a bit. Gojo brought out his laptop and they binge-watched anime for a couple of hours. Geto was sitting cross-legged in front of him, the laptop propped open on Gojo's desk. Gojo wasn't really paying attention to the screen. He had his hands in Geto's hair, trying to braid it, his long fingers getting tangled up in it as he twisted the strands around. Geto wasn't watching the screen either. His eyes were closed. Even if Gojo jerked his head around a little, it always felt nice when he played with his hair. They left the room to grab food from the convenience store and sat on their patio, bundled in their hoodies as the autumn evening settled around them. Geto watched the sky change colors as he polished off the rest of his tuna mayo onigiri. Gojo was crinkling a foil bag full of chips and was noisily crunching on them, interrupting the reverie of the sunset. Geto turned to him and shook his head, smiling and rolling his eyes. Gojo tilted his head and shrugged his shoulders as if to say, What? What did I do? It was a good day, but Geto was worn out. He shyly approached Gojo's bed after the lights were turned out. Gojo lifted the comforter, inviting him in. Geto settled into Gojo's arms but didn't quite nestle against him like he usually did. At least he chose to share my bed with me again, Gojo thought. In the middle of the night, Geto moved in closer, tucking his head into the crook of Gojo's shoulder. He listened to the rhythm of Gojo's gentle breaths, pressing a hand to his chest. There was Gojo's heartbeat, steady and strong, how Geto wished he could be.